Welcome back to another episode of Logistics Remix. Today's guest took a very different route to parcel automation, one that started with solving his own shipping pain points and led to building one of the most data-driven tools in e-commerce logistics. Anthony Robinson is the founder and CEO of ShipScience, a company helping brands uncover hidden savings, automate claims, and make smarter parcel decisions through data and automation. From founding multiple successful startups to scaling ShipScience into a trusted partner used by over 700 brands, Anthony's story is one of persistence, product innovation, and vision for the future of logistics technology. Anthony, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Timmer. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I was looking forward to this conversation. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. And why don't we just start here? We'll want to start with the origin story. And you'd already built and led several successful companies before starting ShipScience. So can you talk about that journey and what ultimately led you to start ShipScience?
Yeah, of course. Like probably most people, I didn't study logistics or have like a logistics background. Really, I didn't grow up in the industry, but I've always been very interested in kind of the intersection of technology and business. So early on, I started a industrial e-commerce business, and as a byproduct of that, sort of stumbled into logistics problems. And as a seven-figure UPS shipper, we were bumping into issues like trying to figure out how to just get our hands around all the different issues. I felt like we never really had a great grasp on what was going on with all of our shipping. It was just it's just a factor. It's just everything goes out in boxes, and we were managing costs, but I always felt like there was something missing. Part of it was, I think, not having clear benchmarks. Part of it was there's just so many variables and so much changing, so that you spend a lot of time figuring out what's working. Things just change the next month, and then you have to go back through that same deep analysis to figure it out again. So after I left, I sold that business and exited. I was trying to think about what I'm going to do next. And I was like, this is a problem that I feel like I can dive into, and that probably a lot of other people are also having. So I started ShipScience. It's a technology company in the beginning, purely technology. We spent most of our early days helping folks manage billing errors, late shipment refund opportunities, things like that, where we'd plug into their UPS and FedEx accounts. We would help them manage or monitor for these types of things, and then ultimately get money back when there were errors that popped up. What we found fairly early on, probably after a year or 2 years of doing that, was there's really a lot more hiding in the data than what customers were aware of, and that we were aware of at the time as well. So we pivoted the business. While we still did that, we pivoted the business, the core of the business, to helping folks with their strategy, and using data to help them set the right strategy for where they wanted to go, from anywhere from just managing the data in general to looking at how to set their network up properly and how to optimize the agreements they have with their carriers. And then, ultimately the next step beyond that was looking for ways to help them manage problems that occur at scale. So loss and damage parcel claims is an example of that, where not really a problem if you're a super small business, but as you scale, you end up creating a lot of iterative issues and management issues with bigger, or things that would typically be small problems, but ultimately become bigger pain points when you begin scaling your business.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's pretty common you hear entrepreneurs, when they go start a company, they're trying to solve a problem that they've encountered in their own life, right? In their own
Yeah.
careers or their previous businesses. So it sounds like you went down that rabbit hole of, okay, what problems was I facing, and how can I help others solve it? Because I've done a lot of this for my own company. So I think that's pretty cool. If anyone wants to start a company these days, right? It's like, hey, look at the problems you're facing today. Look at the problems you're solving. You're encountering about a thousand, maybe tens of thousands of others companies or people are facing the same problems.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a great way to start a business. And yeah, I think even after you've started a business and they've sort of attacked a specific problem, is really important. And we found this to be the case, to just be in tune with what your customers are feeling and experiencing, because things change so fast in logistics in general, and in most businesses in general, especially with what's going on with AI and everything else these days. The problems that you thought might have been a problem a year or two ago may be different. Like there may be a different, bigger, more interesting, more important problem to take on. So, and pivoting is not necessarily a bad thing. Just being able to do that is important in business as well.
Totally. You mentioned something. You mentioned claims, but for those who might not be as deep into shipping, I guess as we are, can you define what are parcel claims? Like, how often do they occur? And like, what is the status quo? Like, how do brands typically handle them?
Yeah, it's a good question, because claims can actually mean a few different things. You ship a package with UPS or FedEx, you get $100 of included declared value coverage. And what that means is, you don't have to pay anything in addition to what you paid for the shipping. But if that package is lost or damaged in transit, you'd get a check back from the carrier for $100 plus the value of the transportation. If you want to buy insurance above and beyond that, you can do so with the carrier. You can also buy third-party insurance, but there's a lot of different types of insurance. But the claims are, especially the claims that we're referring to when ShipScience is dealing with them, we're talking about the declared value coverage that you get from the carrier. That can either be the $100 of included coverage, or it can be paid declared value that you add on to that package at the time of shipping. I would say that most customers that we work with just run with the $100 of included coverage. They're rolling the dice above and beyond that, unless they are shipping, something that's highly sensitive, or, very valuable goods or something like that they're looking at maybe adding on third-party insurance. So the next part of your question, how often do claims occur against that? There's two types of claims. There's a loss claim and a damage claim. As I mentioned, loss is, pretty obvious. It's like there's a missed delivery or a porch piracy, or maybe the carrier, lost it in one of their distribution centers. We call that a non-POD, or there's no proof of delivery for that type of loss. The other type of claim is a damage claim. Those claims are a little more variable, because damage claims largely depend on how you've packed the item, if you're and what you're shipping. Obviously, if you're shipping a T-shirt and a little pack, chances of the damage are pretty low. If you're shipping a shower door in a big box, like that might get damaged at a higher rate. So the rates of occurrence between loss and damage are also pretty variable because of those things. Like loss rates, I would say carriers are pretty good these days about not losing packages, but even still, 0.4 to 0.8% of what goes out the door doesn't end up making it to the final customer, for a variety of those reasons that I mentioned. Damage, totally dependent on what you ship. As I said, we've seen customers that have really, almost no damage rate. We've seen customers that have a 5% damage rate. I've seen some customers have like a 20% damage rate of what they ship out. And obviously, when you get into that category, it's time to start looking at your package engineering and trying to figure out how to improve the way you're shipping. Maybe parcel's not the right mode for you if
Right,
you're having
something
that
else
high
is
of a
going
damage.
on.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and I think as a result of all of what I just said, the final part of your question, how do brands typically handle claims? It's pretty inconsistent. And that's specifically because they occur at very different rates. It's tough to tell when they happen. If you're really, let's just take damage off the table. If you're just looking at loss, it feels like it doesn't happen that often. But the issue really is that when you present scale, if you're shipping hundreds of thousands of boxes a week, that, fraction of 1% loss really starts to add up. So, we see some bigger customers that have, thousands of lost packages a week because they're shipping hundreds of thousands or millions of boxes a week. And so it becomes a material number at that point. Yeah, and brands typically just handle them manually. We've seen they have a claims agent that's trying to keep on top of this stuff. They're having either somebody in customer service or somebody in operations gets a call from a customer saying they didn't get what they expected. They go into the carrier website and file a claim and try and stay on top of it, and it's pretty cumbersome.
Right. So it sounds like they're either not staying on top of it, or if they're staying on top of it, it's someone in customer service getting a call. saying
Yeah.
the shipment never got there, and now you've got a customer service person that's got all these people like queued up and waiting for support, having to file a claim. That
Yeah,
doesn't sound too efficient.
it's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult to stay on top of, one, just what needs to be filed. And it's also a function of like making sure the carriers make it somewhat difficult. And I don't think I wouldn't say that the carriers are doing this on purpose, right? Like there are things that they need in order to make sure the claim is filed, and they have an underwriting system of their own. So, you file the claim, you can't just give them the tracking number and say, please file the claim. It's, they need a proof of value. They need, proof of shipment. They need a bunch of different things. They need some information about you, how you related to that shipment, and then ultimately, value and description and some things like that. So, we've seen like one of the sticking points, interestingly, is getting the invoice attached for the proof of value. So, you want to file the claim, you're in customer service. Maybe that customer hasn't been billed yet for the shipment. Maybe they have. You got to go into your ERP, download that, attach it to the claim. And I think one of the two carriers, I believe I don't want to get this wrong, but I think it's UPS. You can't attach that during the claim filing process. You have to wait for UPS to accept the claim, and then you have to log back in later and attach that proof of value. So if you forget, you're not going to get your claim paid.
Yeah, it's a multi-step process right there.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into your solution there at ShipScience. So, how do you guys automate claims for brands today, and like what kind of impacts are customers seeing? Are there any success stories that you could share?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So how we do it, really the core of ShipScience system is our connection points. So we're connecting to carrier systems, we're connecting to customers' business systems, and really creating a sort of single point of parcel truth, if you want to consider that, for all of the data that touches your parcel systems. So what that allows us to do is when we can monitor all of your shipping volume as shipments are going out the door, we can identify when a proof of delivery is missing because we know that there was a shipment that was supposed to arrive today, and 7 days later it still never arrived. That qualifies. There's no movement. That qualifies as a non-POD. It's time for us to file a claim. So from there, because we have access to your other business systems, we can do things like identify what was in that box. We know the value and the description of the item. We know because we're connected to your e-com system, we can pull a proof of value, create a PDF, and upload that with the claim as well. So we can do all of these things that historically have been pretty manual processes, just because of the connectivity we have between all of these various tools and systems. So it speeds up the filing process substantially because we're hitting everything immediately as soon as it becomes able to be filed. We also save a bunch of hours from CS's time trying to just manage what's going in, what needs to be updated, what's missing documentation, what needs to be filled in and enriched. Our system's going to take care of all of that. And then obviously, like on the back end, the most important impact is increase approvals because we're hitting every single claim. We're not guessing at it. We don't hit most of them. We hit all of them. And that's going to ultimately result in more dollars back into the shipper's pocket.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
what I got there was more efficient process, a much more efficient process. You're connecting all the systems so that you're getting all the information to one place that's required for that claim, and you're trying where someone could potentially miss a claim, right? Because you mentioned it was like 0.4, 0.8% go lost. Well, in your case, like you're attacking each one, right? You're following up on each one of those packages.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so we're monitoring for those events and catching them in real time. So we see when things aren't delivered. We see when carriers also flag items as damaged. We see those come in, and we're sitting on top of all of those. And immediately, within 24 hours, those get filed. So there's no queuing, there's no batching. It just everything goes in, incrementally as soon as it's ready. And we have all the data to organize. And this is an important component. It's the organization. We have a submission checklist. Everything that needs to be included in that claim gets included. If we have to wait to include it, our system waits and then it pushes it in. So it has a checklist to make sure that we include everything that's needed to get that claim approved.
Right, because because well, one of the things that could happen is you may submit a claim, doesn't have all the details that are required, it's going to get pushed back. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And the carriers differ in how they manage those, but in some cases it's pushed back as a denial. So the carrier will say, "Yeah, this claim is denied. Resubmit this claim when you have the full documentation." In other cases, they won't do anything. They'll just leave the claim open, waiting for you to submit the documentation. So it's difficult for a shipper to manage especially at scale, manage the volume of those claims that are in both of those cases, where there's some denials that they need to go back and fish through and figure out what needs to get submitted, or there's ones that are just held open that are waiting for information.
That makes sense. And on my follow up there, are there any like success stories that you could share? Like any customers like that are seeing like some significant kind of return on investment with ShipScience?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've helped hundreds of customers with this. A couple notable ones of late. I don't want to, violate any of our non-disclosures that we have, but I'll give descriptions instead of brand names. But we have an aftermarket luxury accessories DTC brand that was using a competitor of ours prior to engaging with us. They they had a disconnected process. They had some folks in operations engaging with a competitor. They had some folks in their inventory and loss management that didn't even know that relationship existed. So they came to us, and when they connected ShipScience, within the first 30 days, they found $120,000 of claims that had essentially stalled out with UPS because they hadn't provided invoice proof. So this was, our competitor was filing the claims. Things were going into the carrier, but because they weren't providing invoice proof, the claims got stalled out. They were just sitting there unpaid. And then, our system found them, provided that additional information. And within, 30 days of connecting to us, all of that money was coming in. And so we've, built cleanup processes. And this is a good point here, is that like, even if you have an internal process where some claims are getting filed manually, we can sit behind that and continue to monitor for additional, cleanup opportunities against claims that were filed manually. It doesn't have to go through ShipScience to be, to be cleaned up and enriched by our systems, and just make sure that everything gets paid out. So that's one. Another one that was a really fun one was a big designer apparel business came to us in July of this year, actually. And what's interesting about them is we do a free analysis for all of our customers. We plug in their information into ShipScience and kind of view the world, see what they're doing today, see how many claims they're filing relative to their shipping volume. And when we plugged them in, we felt like there was something missing. We asked them, do you guys maybe have another account that you didn't connect where you're filing claims? And I said, no, this is the only one that we would have. And they're like, okay, well, based on what you're filing, I mean, they were missing probably 90% of their non-POD claim opportunities. So plug them in. Within the first 14 days, they'd recovered over $500,000 just in non-POD claims. And since July, it's now October. They just broke the $1 million mark. So they're like 1.25 million in total recovery from non-POD alone. And all hands off on their side. Everything's flowing through our system automatically.
What that's incredible. Were they expecting that kind of ROI or that kind of recovery?
Only because we told them we thought that it was there in the beginning. So, we do, again, the analysis, and we're pretty good about identifying based on what we see in the data, what the opportunity looks like. From my conversations with them, there was some skepticism about that early on. Obviously, it's a trust and verify sort of situation, but they're very pleased to have those dollars rolling back into the
It
business
sounds
now.
like it. $1 million in since July. It's really good. That's really good. But not all. As we touched on earlier, not all claims do get approved. Like, I am curious here. Like, what are the most common reasons uh, why parcel carriers are going to just deny claims? Like, why are they getting pushed back?
Yeah, and there's a few different categories. I think first and foremost, and this is one that we can't do a lot with, is damage related to packaging, right? So if you ship something, as in the shower door case I mentioned before, if you're not sufficiently packaging the product relative to the carrier's requirements, they're just going to deny the claim. So in damage claims, it's really important to make sure that you are using proper packaging, and you have to sometimes make a trade-off or decision about the trade-off between spending a little more money on packaging versus the risk and cost associated with damage, and obviously, dealing with the upset customer on the other side of that as well. Just balancing those things is important for businesses shipping potentially fragile items. Outside of that, I would say the two most common reasons that we see claims denials are: one, you missed the filing deadline, so you didn't get the claim submitted or get the documentation into the carrier before the claims deadline window closed. The second is you're missing some required documentation. We touched on that a little bit earlier. So those two, I think, are the most common that we see across the board. Fortunately for companies that work with ShipScience, the first case, missing the filing deadline, that never happens. We've got obviously controls on our side where we're watching all of those deadlines, with just to kind of throw some of them out there so people can be aware of them. Safely, I would say, try and get your claims in before the 60-day mark of the ship date of that package. UPS's window is 60 days for both loss and damage. FedEx has a 60-day damage window, has a 9-month loss window. They're not going to penalize you for filing it within 60. So I think if I was going to put something on my calendar, I'd just say, just make sure everything's filed before 60 days. I definitely see a lot of claims from a lot of customers where they've missed those deadlines. So and that's obviously got to be frustrating for them and for their customers when they're calling and trying to file a claim and are like, you're out of luck, you missed by a couple days or something. In terms of documentation, that's another one where customers typically, I would say there's two forms of documentation that are missed. One is that proof of value document. So the carrier says, yes, your item is XYZ widget and it's worth $125, but we need you to provide a document showing that this is, a valid value. Usually the easiest form of that is like an order confirmation or an invoice. You can, download from your system, upload the PDF to the carrier and prove that value. There's a lot of different things they accept, like purchase orders, things like that. But generally the invoice is the easiest way to prove it. Missing that document is, I would say, 9/10 of the missing documentation that the carrier is going to push back on. The other docs occasionally are like shipper waivers. So if you're a third party to the shipment, or if you're the receiver of the shipment, in many cases, the carrier will say, well, hey, you aren't the owner of this because you didn't originate the package. Upload a shipper waiver proving that the person who shipped the package is authorizing you to have the ability to file this claim, because otherwise they don't want to have a double claim. They don't want to have to tell the shipper later on that they can't honor their claim because they gave the money to you. So it's important to make sure that you have both of those two things, the shipper waiver in the correct situations, and then obviously proof of value with just about everything you ship.
Awesome. Appreciate you sharing those insights. I think that's very helpful. Especially anyone that's already that's thinking about their current process. Like, am I doing claims the right way? Am I filing the right information? Am I missing any claims? I bet they're right now writing down those deadlines.
Hopefully.
I'm curious also, I mean, we talk a lot about claims, but like what else are you seeing? Like when new customers are coming to ShipScience today, like what challenges are they facing like the most often? What are those most common challenges that are bringing them to ShipScience?
Yeah, we see a lot of different things. Every business is a little different, and different times of year, even people have different focuses and different problems. But a big common thing that we see lately has been around the network construction and thinking about, should I be using more carriers? Should I be, looking at, potentially adopting a new carrier into my mix? That's a big common one that we're hearing lately. I think people are also very sensitive to rates and trying to understand like benchmarking against those rates. Like, am I in a good place relative to my rates? Like, the carriers are adding surcharges and raising rates constantly. Like, what can I do? Like, where should I push back? That's a common question. Um, and then the other thing that we see is like there's a lot of like kind of chasing shadows that happens where they like think there may be a problem, but it really isn't the biggest problem that they have. And a lot of times it's because they just have a really tough time getting their arms around their data. It's hard to organize. It's hard to keep the data clear. And it's also difficult because there's so many variables that are changing constantly. So it's tough to know where they need to focus their time in order to kind of like put themselves into the best position. Claims is an example of that too, because it's just tough to see what's going on with claims denials and successes. And there's like disjointed ownership. There's no central, parcel systems owner in a lot of cases. So finance isn't talking to ops, isn't talking to CS, and they all own a part of it, so that nobody really understands in totality what's going on with that.
Yeah, and I find that yeah, a lot of times they're just not even looking at the data, right? It's like, hey, I'll look at it, but sometimes I'll look at it, and I'll pay attention, and I won't look at it, and it becomes a consistency issue, and sometimes you miss when a carrier mid-year, other than the GRI, the general rate increases, which happens in January, does something to change rates, right? So we've seen this with accessorial charges, with fuel surcharges, and all of a sudden you take your eye off the ball and you're not looking at the data and the trends, and you miss seeing like a accessorial or something spike up, and all of a sudden your cost goes much higher than you budgeted for.
Yeah.
Um,
And like a lot of times it's tough to even calculate. So people are doing this in Excel a lot of times. And, we've seen, customers provide their math on what's going on with their rates. And then we compare it to our scenario modeling engine. And it's like a wildly different number. Like they're thinking X is happening, but Y is actually happening. And it means, a material difference in terms of how they should be thinking about, managing their surcharges. So, yeah, the disconnected systems is tough. The trying to manage anything in Excel is tough, and trying to calculate things like your dimensional weight impact and like your dim divisor impact, your minimum billable impact. A lot of these surcharges that are now matrixed by zone, like those are difficult to try and calculate in Excel and try and synthesize the impact of them. So, yeah, and it's just really hard for people to stay on top of those things. To your point.
Yeah, totally with you there. So then, if you're let's imagine you're talking to a CFO or controller, like, what questions should they be asking their ops team about parcel operations and parcel spend?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think first and foremost, I would say like, what is our what is our source of truth for our parcel data? So again, I think I've seen this in even very scaled businesses that probably would be embarrassed that this is the case, but they're running a lot of parcel analyses out of disparate spreadsheets. So, they have like spreadsheet for claims, they have spreadsheet for accruals, they have spreadsheet for kind of rate analysis. And then, trying to kind of get those things to talk to each other is really difficult. So, where's your source of truth? And ultimately, like, what are the KPIs attached to that source of truth that help drive your decisions? So that's I think a very important part that most businesses that I've talked to have missed. Another thing is, like things that are off finance's radar are things like talking about claims again. Like, what is the value of your unpaid or denied claims? Because finance sees your paid claims, so they know how much money is coming back, but they typically don't see what's not coming back. So there's a liability associated with that they need to be, thinking about, and then ultimately helping ops, manage and maybe create accruals for if there's an impact to customers or partners. Um, yeah, and I think outside of that, thinking about things like, what percentage of their shipping spend is addressable or optimizable. You're thinking about cost management. Finance cares a lot about that, but like some things are optimizable, some aren't. And like what is the universe of those things that they can be, working with ops to improve. And then the last thing that I would say is important is thinking about the automations around your parcel system. So how automated is the process of invoice auditing? how automated is the process of claims and GL reconciliation, how automated is the invoice gathering process from carriers and getting your PLDs and everything downloaded. There's a lot that can be done in automated systems, the ShipScience being one of them. But a lot of those tasks are still done fairly manually today. And usually what I've seen, and even with like invoice gathering from UPS and FedEx, you miss an invoice or two and your numbers are off, And so when and then you're balancing to something that doesn't match your PLD and everything else. So it's tough. And then the more you put automation in place for those, kind of menial tasks, the better off you're going to be down the road and the less waste in your processes there will be.
Yeah, totally. I'm with you. Those are important things to pay attention to. I would add one in there, which is just like what are my unexpected accessorial charges? A
Yeah,
lot of
that's a good one.
times, a lot of times, like what you'll see is like an address correction, right? Well, why would I have an address correction? Well, because I entered the wrong address or my customer entered the wrong address. But these are pretty hefty fees. These are not tiny accessorials, and so they're going to hit the bottom line. And so if I'm encountering a lot of address corrections, I may want to do something about that. Maybe have some kind of address validation tool in place, on like you mentioned, like the automation and the proactive side. So I always think
Yeah.
about like, hey, what were you not expecting to pay?
Yeah.
Like
One of
we
my
know what's in
favorite,
your rate card, but
for
what
sure.
didn't you want to pay?
Yeah, one of my favorite views in the ShipScience portal is actually the surcharges summary list, and it sorts over a date range all of the surcharges you incurred from like most expensive to least expensive over a period of time. And it's always interesting to see what pops into that list of top tens. Like sometimes it's like a late payment fee, and you're like, oh, I've had like $48,000 of late payment fees over the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever. So it makes it easier again to sort of think about like instead of thinking of these anecdotally and be like, yeah, this address correction fee sucked like that one time. It's interesting to be able to be like, okay, well, yeah, that one address correction fee was painful, but it's much more painful to see that I've had, $20,000 of address correction fees in the last few weeks. Now I definitely need to go and look into why this is happening and how I can fix it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think a CFO or controller is going to want to know why they have so many late payment fees. That's a good one. That's a really good example. Um, you mentioned a little bit about just the carrier mix, and so as brands diversify and beyond, the big two carriers, UPS and FedEx, like how is ShipScience supporting customers that are adding new last mile delivery providers to the mix?
Yeah, there's a few things we're doing. I mean, the first and kind of most obvious is we help them use their current data sets with the big carriers to figure out what plays, what qualifies with those new options that they're considering, both in terms of just general network fit, and also in terms of cost and potential savings that they could benefit from making the switch over to a new carrier. That's the first and kind of most clear way. The second is, when you're a scaled shipper and you look at divesting a certain percent of your volume, there are implications to your relationship or your contract with that incumbent carrier that you're using today. So if I want to take, let's just hypothetically, if I'm going to take 10 or 15% of my volume and shift it over to new regional, but I'm using UPS, maybe I have, tier levels where I'm earning a specific discount for the amount of spend that I'm sending to those carriers. And if I move 20% over to another carrier, I risk disrupting that tier discount. And I don't really know the potential impact of that. Maybe I drop into a tier, maybe I lose that discount entirely. So there's some sensitivities to that. There also, especially with bigger shippers, there are contractual obligations like spend obligations where you have to, you've guaranteed some volume to those carriers over a specified period of time, and you need to make sure you have those commitments that way. So ShipScience is helping analyze those variables. Also, we're looking at helping customers correct the contracts or agreements with those carriers to allow them to explore additional carriers in volume. So it's all great if you're on a rocket ship growth curve and you've got, next year you're going to have 30% more volume to give. So you can do that without penalty. But in the case where you're, a normal business with 5% growth a year or less or whatever, that's going to be, you may need to make some changes to your existing agreements in order to accommodate some of that, movement of volume to another carrier.
Yeah, and I'll second that. I think I do hear a lot from shippers when I'm working to help them, let's say, add a new carrier into the mix. Like, well, how's this going to impact what I'm currently doing with my national carrier, my national carrier rates, because of those tiers that the incentive tiers that they have in place, and some of those calculations. I mean, yeah, it is it's math, but it's takes some experience, right? And a lot of data analytics to really figure out what's the right formula for potentially moving to some volume to the next carrier. Um,
Yeah.
what? Let me ask you this: like, what should we're about to get to peak season. I mean, for some, it's already peak season, right? We're here at the end of October, about to start November, and the busiest shipping days are going to be here in the next few weeks. Like, well, let's talk about some advice that you've got for shippers. Like, what should shippers be paying close attention to during the upcoming peak season to avoid potential losses or potential damage to their deliveries?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's obviously peak season and it gets crazy. A lot of people are probably not even thinking about at this point what to change in their processes to say like it's coming. We got to get through this and come out the other side. And we've seen a lot of people like they don't want to even touch what's going on in their processes until January because it's like we just don't want to disrupt what's going on. We want to just stick the landing, get everything out the door, and make sure that our customers are happy. But I think there are a couple of things that you can probably do that may not be maybe just kind of tightening things up slightly, in advance of peak to minimize losses and damage. I think first and foremost, like what happens at peak, obviously, you know this, like the increased volume across the board um, causes problems with the carriers, both in terms of what goes on at their DCs, their sort centers. Boxes get lost. Like there's definitely an increase in loss that occurs around the holidays because there's so much flowing through those sort centers and coming on and off trucks and airplanes that things get kicked aside, missorted, etc. So that's one thing that's going to happen. Second is things just don't get handled as carefully. There's a lot of boxes moving a lot faster. So I think there's going to be, some mishandling of packages. So I think just being aware that you may need to use a little bit more packaging than you typically would use in non-peak because, boxes may get tossed around a little more than normal. So to handle the missorts and the issues with deliveries, I would say like the best thing for companies to do is to just be proactive with communications with their customers. So customers need to know when things are going out the door. They're the most likely to advocate when something doesn't get delivered. So tell them when something ships, give them timely tracking updates, and give them delivery notifications. Porch piracy is also another thing that happens around the holidays and peak season as people are out, patrolling, looking for boxes on people's porches. Give your customer notification that there's a delivery heading to them today so that they are aware and can get stuff off of their porch, before somebody gets there to take it. So I think that's probably the easiest way to get rid of that. With respect to damage, I'm reluctant to say this because it might be tough to implement prior to peak season, given how close we are. But it is important to know that like there are package engineering services. FedEx has a free package engineering service for their customers where they will inspect your packaging, inspect your products, and tell you exactly how you should pack them, the right materials to pack with, the right size boxes to use, all of those things in order to make sure that your stuff's going to get safely where it wants to go. I don't think that's something that you probably get done before peak at this point, but I do think that it's worth any FedEx shipper taking FedEx up on that offer because it's going to obviously, one, make your customers happier. Things aren't going to get damaged in transit. And two, you're going to have a lot more luck and success with claims if if you're using the advice that they gave you in their package engineering service.
Those are all great tips. So appreciate that. And look, for businesses that are looking to improve their process or even begin managing parcel claims and refunds, like where can they start? Like, what's the first step? Like, they've heard they've listened to us now, they've listened to you talk about claims, and they're like, all right, I want to do something about this. What am I doing first?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to just get a view into your data and look at the opportunity. That can be done basically just connect to a free tool. You can use some of the stats that I threw out in terms of non-POD and damage to just get I guess, an idea about what typically you should see. But like ShipScience, if you connect to us and throw your UPS or FedEx billing data in, our system will go through and analyze very carefully and tell you exactly what the opportunity looks like for loss and damage, and that can sort of justify to you whether it's worth an investment in moving into ShipScience or maybe your volume is such that it doesn't make sense. You're a small shipper with 100 boxes a week or something like that. You can probably manage it on your own. And if that's the case, if you're sort of not sized properly to use a scaled solution like ShipScience, I think there are things you can do on your own to make sure you're on top of this. Get a good data set together. Um, I think you can do it in a Google Sheet, but make sure it's a shared Google Sheet across your organization. And then just make sure you're on top of those deadlines and getting all the data that the carriers need. And then again, when you outgrow that, when you're in the thousands of shipments a week, it's going to be tough to do out of a single sheet. And that's when you need a solution like ShipScience.
Awesome. Well, let's thanks for sharing all those insights and tips. I think I want to wrap it here. Like, looking ahead, what's next for Ship Science over the next 2 to 3 years? Like, what are you guys building? What are you doing next? Just curious, curious to see the view inside the future of Ship Science and your future roadmap.
Yeah, we're excited about where we're going. We're definitely a technology first company. So everything we're doing is, effectively focused on trying to find tools that can help shippers level up how they're using technology to impact their parcel and logistics in general. Um, we're heavily focused and indexed on connectors and connectivity. As I mentioned earlier, we're looking to make sure that we've got the entire ecosystem of tools that touches your parcel programs connected into ShipScience. So we're investing in that part to help ultimately provide tools that can be, allow you to either one, synthesize what's happening in a better way because now all the data is connected into one spot, or two, help you automate things that right now you're having to do manually, either in spreadsheets or through processes with your tools or with the carriers. So that's at a high level. That's what we're doing. We're really, leaning on our customers very, very heavily here to figure out what they need. Which is, again, this is how we kind of stumbled into the claims product that we've put out to market. Is this was all by customer request. So we find things that customers find are gaps, and we build around that. There is, a lot of interesting things happening around AI as well. So we've definitely built some AI into our products. We have some machine learning in our products as well. But the AI wrapper has made a big difference for us with things like helping to manage emails coming in from carriers regarding claim statuses, helping to send emails with customers to carriers or to partners with updates, and also to help provide like synthesis on what's going on, so we can compute things, figure out what's happening with some shipping volume or with like some anomalies in the data that we see over a period of time. We can use AI to like create a narrative around that and then provide that to a customer and make it easier for them to ultimately action upon that, because it's clear language of what needs to be done and can give them kind of a clear path of actions.
It sounds like AI is on the roadmap or already being used. It sounds very cool, very exciting. Listen, I mean, claims is not that much fun. But it sounds like just from this conversation, you got me really excited about all the different systems they have to connect together, all the analytics, all the processes, and the ifs and thens, and yeah, it does sound like it's not an exciting problem to have, but it's an exciting problem to solve. So
Yeah. I think is for any shipper who has dealt with claims in the past, they've felt the pain of it. And this is like it's like it's a relief valve for usually what has been a substantial problem for folks. And I think that it shouldn't really be an exciting thing for people. Like they should really not have to think about it that much. It should be just like, hey, this just works. Like it's something that just gets taken care of. We've got a lot of other important problems to deal with. Like claims is an ancillary thing that they shouldn't have to focus that much time on, and that's really our goal, is to just take that problem entirely off of their plates as much as we can.
awesome. Well, Anthony, thanks again for joining me on the show and sharing the Ship Science story. Now, where can people go to learn more about Ship Science or connect with you?
Yeah, best way to learn more about ShipScience is on our website, www.shipscience.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well. You can find me there. You can find ShipScience there as well, talking about all things shipping, network optimization, news, obviously claims, things like that as well. But yeah, love to connect with, and may feel free to DM me as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. So, listeners, as always, subscribe to Logistics Remix on YouTube. Drop a like if you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks, Anthony, again for joining me on the show.
Thanks, Demmer. Thanks for having me.